Well, hello everybody. Welcome to, this is the fourth Community Connectors event this season. And this one is connected to an Inspector Calls, which is, it's entering its last weekend of shows. So if you're watching this, get those tickets right now because, probably the first show is already over. But it's a great show, and it's one that very directly poses the question, what do we owe to each other? And I like my art very direct. One reason that I was always so interested in this series, these discussions tied to plays, is because of the way that it would take the themes of the work and make them very explicit. Like a more structured version of talking to your friends when you're like walking out of a movie, but instead of just like talking about a cool thing that Captain America did or whatever, you can like really get into the issues that face our communities. So that was why when I learned what this play was about, I immediately thought of both of you. And so, I think as we get into this discussion about what social responsibility means and from various perspectives, we'll learn more. But let's just start by, can you please introduce yourselves and talk about the organization that you are sort of here on behalf of? Liz?
Yeah, sure. So Liz Torrance, and I work for Kennebunk Savings.
And what is your title at Kennebunk Savings?
I am the Social Responsibility and Community Relations Manager.
Which, also, like, full disclosure, I also work for Kennebunk Savings.
Introduce yourself, Sam.
Yeah, I'm Zac Little. I always forget to do this. Anytime I'm hosting anything, I forget to introduce myself. I'm Zac Little. I'm on the board of directors at the New Hampshire Theater Project. I'm the chair of the programming committee. And, just a big fan. And I am the digital content administrator at Kennebunk Savings. So let's just, for like a little bit of context too, Liz, give me the Kennebunk Savings blurb. Give me the normal spiel about what Kennebunk Savings is all about.
Yeah, so it starts with some banky stuff, but it'll make sense in a minute. But so we were founded in 1871, and it was when folks in Kennebunk just needed a safe place to put their money, and there wasn't one. So there was a commercial bank, but not a safe place for just your everyday person. So a bunch of folks in the community got together and started a bank, and they didn't take an interest in it. So basically, that means that we are a mutual bank. We don't have any stockholders, so we just exist to serve our communities. So since 1994, we've made a commitment to give 10% of our profits to nonprofit organizations every year, and that's something we call our community promise. And so we're kind of rooted in meeting our community's needs, and so now the work that I get to do is thinking about other ways that we can serve our communities. So through our philanthropy, through volunteering, employee wellness, and lots of really great nonprofit partnerships.
Yeah, and so Liz gets to do that all day, every day, and I get to do that for most of my day too. So we both have good jobs. And another person who I think has a great job is you, Michelle. So please explain that to us.
Well, so I'm Michelle Veasey, the Executive Director of New Hampshire Businesses for Social Responsibility. So, long name, but we go by NHBSR to keep it simple. It's an organization that really is member-based, so over 200 businesses, organizations, a couple of government agencies, but mostly businesses in northern New England. And all of them that are somewhere on their journey we tend to use sustainability a lot, which is for us kind of like the umbrella term for, environmental action, but also social responsibility. And so that means, companies like yours that are really committed to community, but also, companies that are really committed to building stronger workplaces and caring about, the whole person that's coming to their work. More recently, we're kind of going outside of the walls of a business and trying to build more opportunities there. So, and I can talk more about that later. But it's really a great organization to work with. Really, some of the, amazing companies like Kennebunk Savings, the Timberland, Stonyfields, all those companies that kind of come to mind when you think about, companies that really demonstrate their corporate responsibility to their communities.
Yeah, I remember going to my first conference for the NHBSR and thinking oh, this is great because this is an organization that will like bully companies into doing the right thing, you know? And I love that. And I think we should all be doing more of that. And I think that's something we'll probably talk about a little bit, as we get into it a little bit more. So,
Except for that we don't bully anyone.
well, in a very
Use carrots.
benign, friendly, it's more carrot than stick. But like there's an implied stick, you know? And that's something that I would like to talk about too, which is just what motivated each of you to seek careers in this kind of place? What got you, interested in working for a bank, Liz? And what got you interested in running an organization like this, Michelle?
Well, I actually, it was a late in life change. So I'm much older than Liz. But I was in high tech for about 25 years, designing and developing software and, working with a lot of consumer packaged good companies or CPG companies. So, I kind of knew the business world well, but I knew that there was an opportunity for businesses to really do good in the world, and had seen some examples of it with some of the companies that I worked for. So I was actually volunteering for NHBSR when the executive director position came open. So I jumped at it. For me, it was an opportunity to really, live the values in my job that I believe so strongly in. So, and that all grew out of kind of, when my daughters were born. I think, the world that was used to be black and white when I was just, straight business person, it suddenly became very gray, and there were lots of things that just I knew had a lot of different angles. And so, this was an opportunity to really get to work with some amazing people and companies, and those people make the companies great. That's really, the nice thing about the work that I do is working with amazing people.
Thanks. And I know for me, so when I was in college, I thought a lot about what I wanted to do. Couldn't figure it out, but I knew I wanted to do something where I felt like I had purpose. And I thought about being a veterinarian. I thought about the environment and so many different things. And I struggled a bit, honestly, to find where I belonged. And I came to a point where I wanted to have a good career. And I knew I could at least start that at a bank. I'm actually a third generation banker, which is not at all where I thought I would end up, but thought I would at least get my foot in the door with a good company. So as I was looking at banks, I was looking at some smaller banks, more community banks, and I learned about Kennebunk Savings, and I learned kind of about the culture and this the principles kind of that they operate under with giving back to the community a lot. And I was really excited about it. And I just started working in our Dover branch. And everyone that came in, I would give them a flyer about the Community Promise program because I thought it was so cool. A job opened up about a year in that had something to do with this work. And I just remember my heart pounding as I was reading the job description because I realized I might actually be able to have something to do with this work. And I got the job. That was 9 years ago. And it was sort of a part of my job for a long time. And I just worked really hard and tried to show that I could learn things and add value to this program as much as I could. And now I get to do it full time. And we have a team of 3 that I manage. And we're full-time focused on the community and the work that we do. And it's pretty great. I feel very lucky.
I've never heard someone say third generation banker before like it's an ethnicity. I love that. I'm actually third generation Italian, second generation banker. So what was the weirdest job that you had on your journey to figuring out that you wanted to be, have more purpose with your career?
Ooh, I worked at a vegan restaurant in Northwood called Susty's for a little while. That was pretty great. That was probably
I think it's so interesting that you had this idea that you wanted to have a career with purpose right out of college, because I feel like that's something that it feels like, especially when people talk about how to hire millennials and Zoomers, this is kind of a newer revelation. And in fact, what I think one thing that really stuck out to me about the play is that there is this generational divide among the characters. There's a mother and father, and there's a daughter and son. And when it comes to acknowledging their complicity in this very tragic thing that occurs, the daughter and son are much more, ready to accept responsibility and guilt, whereas the mother and father have like this, I don't know, kind of more Milton Friedman-y kind of like perspective or something, where they are thinking more about like the institutions and the belief that somehow responsibility rests somewhere outside of them, and that there are structures that you have to have faith in that are going to take care of the things that are supposed to take care of, and you just have to take care of yourself. And, I guess we could just for now say, do we think that is mostly true? Like, do we think that this idea, are we in the middle of like a surge of believing in social responsibility, or is it just currently affecting employment? Like, is that why we're focused on right now?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot more focus. I mean, it does feel like it's something new, this idea of purpose, but or people really focusing on purpose that I think the pandemic kind of uncovered, because people suddenly realized that there were different ways from employers to employees. I mean, there's a different way to really show up in your job and to really feel like you've accomplished something, and so purpose is, I think, so important now. But I think it's it's something that's always been there. I kind of laugh sometimes when my daughters are in their 30s, and so I hear a lot about millennials, and I think it's something, when you talk about the generational differences, it's not that all of these hopes and dreams weren't there for us. It was kind of, I think that when I grew up, we had to take a lot of responsibility for who we were and what we accomplished in the world, and I think that some of that is reflected a little bit in what you're saying, is that, because we were so focused on taking personal responsibility, that you kind of portray that on other people as well. And so that, might be where some of that difference comes. I think it's wonderful that that young people are willing to kind of question the status quo and push where maybe we've gotten jaded by being part of the system for too long, and so having someone younger coming in and kind of questioning and thinking differently and softening the edges and opening ideas up, I think is a great opportunity. But I think all of us want to work for something where we have purpose. It's kind of, we all define it differently, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that when you say this idea that like this idea of self-reliance, right, you were kind of like projecting onto other people, that's really interesting, and that's not an angle that I'd considered before. And it's one of those things that like it always can cut in both directions, right, where like, yes, I do believe that like younger people have a stronger sense of how their actions affect other people, and a series of disasters going back like the last 6 or so years may have like really helped animate that. Even now, I think I became, I guess, very aware as I discovered the idea that my career could have some kind of like purpose attached to it. It was similar, like I had a son, and then I was like, oh my God, I need to fix the world, right? That was my first thing, was like, what have I done? I brought new life into this world, and now I need to make things better somehow. How would I do that? But then the other half of that realization was like, I was looking around at the world around me and looking at like these government structures and everything else and going like, nothing's happening anymore, And so you have this feeling of like, we have to do it, right? Like no one's coming. That's like the thing. I feel like I hear that more often than all the time now, is like, yeah, you have to accept the reality, like no one is coming to save you, and you have to do it yourself.
We as an organization too have we used to be very focused on encouraging businesses to work on kind of the things inside your facilities, at your workplaces, and whether you're impacting the environment and how you appear in the community. But then probably in the past 5 years, it's really been, everybody starting to accept that this is kind of how we interact with all of our stakeholders, not just locally in our community, but, everybody that we're impacting. And we have to start thinking about, if we don't build stronger communities, if we don't care about everyone in our community, if we don't help, make sure that we've got opportunities in place for everyone to reach their potential, whatever their potential is for them, and that they feel included regardless of who they are, how they interact, that we're not going to be able to have a successful society. So it's important for us to not just model inside our walls what we want the world to be, but really to engage with the community and interact on what their needs are, and make sure that we're providing positive opportunities, and that we're listening and responding appropriately. And so it's really understanding that it's a much bigger network that we're all trying to build.
I feel like it does feel like a time when people are looking to the business community to step up. And I think we are, to your point, kind of in this moment of time when it's hard. There's a lot happening right now. And I think we have some really good momentum with people paying attention to what's happening in the world. And I do think with the younger generation, they might be a little less willing to kind of check their values at the door when they think about who they do business with. And they're paying attention to what some of these companies are doing. So for us, I know it feels like a time to step up and make sure that we're telling our story, because I think sometimes when it's part of your DNA as a business and you're just kind of going about what you do and trying to do good things and give back to your communities and find opportunities to add value, you don't always remember to be like, oh yeah, hey, we're doing this. And that's one of the cool things with working with Zac, actually. He's a really great storyteller. But now I think for us, we're thinking about, it's not just telling the story and putting ourselves out there. It's also a call to action to other businesses to say, hey, this is an us problem. This is not a them problem. And we all have some responsibility in this to better our communities. So yeah, I agree.
I remember when I got to that point where I was starting to feel like I wanted to have more career purpose. I was working for a large organization, and I was kind of shocked to realize how easy it was to start making a difference, and spearheading different efforts to try to get people to commute more sustainably to work and that kind of thing. These different little initiatives you can get involved in. And it started to feel like I had kind of secret knowledge, and I was like, I don't want this to be a secret. So I was kind of trying to tell everyone I knew, you can go work for an organization that employs hundreds of people, and then you can just move it around yourself, very easily. And it's just, I think I just came by the idea of collective power by way of a job, which lots of people come by that idea in different ways. But it's just, I think I've always been really interested in it, I guess. And that's one reason I'm always so interested in the New Hampshire Businesses for Social Responsibility, which is hard to say. But, I've always been interested in it because I love that idea of the place where you go to work and get a paycheck every day. You can also just think of it as a collection of people with more resources than you. And it can have the same values as you, right? You can either choose to work for a company that is like that, or you can kind of make it that way. Because it is a collection of people is one person. When you were talking about this focus on original internal wellness and then focusing on the community, it made me think about everybody I know who works in the nonprofit space, and everybody burns out every 2 years, and then they have to have a couple of months of self-care to get back on the wagon, and it's because you do have to have that focus. You have to have that internal and that external focus as a human. So it's kind of funny that organizations are the same way. Jenny has a question.
Well, I do, because I'm very sorry that Janet Stevens wasn't able to be here, because we wanted to talk about government. And when you're talking about how individuals are taking responsibility, the younger generation, and businesses stepping up. But it seems that at the same time, in a lot of our governmental areas, there's less emphasis on social responsibility. Do you think those two things go hand in hand, or do you agree with me?
I'm glad to hear you say that it feels like that to you too. It also feels like that to me. And not just because of the bigger, splashier things 5 Supreme Court justices appointed by presidents who lost the popular vote overturning a law that 70% of people agree with, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That was subtle.
But like other reasons too. Like it feels harder and harder to feel like you are affecting even your local representatives. We're in the middle of a million gerrymandering fights right now. And that's exactly the reason. I think people sometimes lose sight of that. I think that they think we were having this in New Hampshire with they're trying to turn every artistic community in the Seacoast into one single district. It's not just a matter of like this now the Democrats get one, the Republicans get one. It's about being able to push those people around the way that you can push the CEO of your company around. You should be able to do both. But I don't know, it feels to me like it's easier to do one and not the other right now. But I don't know how you guys feel about it.
Well, I think that's one of we're really trying to encourage businesses to raise their voice, to advocate for policies that support sustainability. So like last year, it was in New Hampshire, there was the House Bill 544, which was the divisive concepts language, which was all this rallying point of CRT on the conservative side. And we came out just forcefully saying, well, not forcefully, but we brought over 300 businesses saying, this is not what we want. It's important to us that we're able to explore our history, both from the standpoint that how our future employees are educated, to what we're able to train within our business walls itself. Unfortunately, we were only able to impact, kind of taking away the limitations for diversity, equity, and inclusion training. There were no limitations within businesses, but it's still, and higher educational institutions. But, we came out again this year saying it doesn't belong anywhere in New Hampshire. Like, this is creating a black eye for our state. And it's something that, we've got to speak out against. And so we're trying to get businesses to think about what are the values that you hold dear, and make sure that you're standing up when you see those values being crossed. And yes, we are encouraging people to kind of think about some of the other things that are happening and how that is affecting your business. But, we had over half of the state's 10 largest employers, 6 of the 10 signed on immediately in opposition to 544. So, I think it is important to kind of make sure that we as not just individuals, but we're pushing inside of our businesses to kind of grow that grassroots, effort that, it's not just a CEO signing on to something, but it's your employees coming together and saying that this is important to us. And I think that was the thing that turned things for Disney down in Florida with the Don't Say Gay. I think they wanted to kind of step back and not get involved, but the employees pushed back. So to your point, Zach, I think it is a lot of, how can we all come to our jobs every day and kind of bring our personal values? We can't check them at the door. Mm-hmm. We shouldn't check them at the door, at least. And so how do we bring those values to the work that we do? And sometimes that's our keynote speaker, as you know, at our conference was really big about bringing your values to the way that you create purpose in your job. And so, I think that even as individuals, we can do a lot of work to kind of reframe our employers.
Yeah, and I think for us, this is one of those times when being on the smaller side as a business is helpful. We definitely have a very local focus, and so I think when we talk about our principles and what we can do to sort of help the communities where we do business thrive, a lot of that is just shutting up and listening and learning and trying to understand what's happening where we are. So a number of years ago, that was and continuing today, it was substance use disorder, and seeing how much it was affecting the communities where we do business, and the overdose deaths that were just so horrifying in Maine and New Hampshire. And so for us, how can, we're a bank, what does that have to do with us? Well, again, of course it has to do with us. It's affecting our communities, it's affecting everybody. And so for us, it was just kind of digging into that issue and understanding what we could do. So beyond making donations, we made donations around a particular fund and gave around $150,000 each year to local organizations to support prevention and recovery efforts. But then it's not just what we give, it's what we do. So it's figuring out how we can take action. And for us, it's a number of things. We held a forum for the business community to talk about this because it is affecting everyone and it is affecting our workplaces. And we were able to get Gordon Smith, who is the director of opioid response in the state of Maine, to come and speak. And we also had Shannon Bresaw, who runs the Recovery Friendly Workplace Initiative in New Hampshire, come to that event. And they met and were really excited to meet each other. And Gordon Smith started to get excited about creating Recovery Friendly Workplace in New Hampshire, or in Maine. And so I think for us, it felt like we were able to kind of bring the right people into the room and then talk about for us why we think this is so important. So we are a recovery-friendly workplace. It's a really important part of our internal wellness and supporting our employees and our communities. And so I think where we could add could add value in that case by just kind of connecting the right people and then pushing and saying we really need this in Maine. And now I think it's going to happen soon. So I think whenever we can push that change where we see those needs,
Well, the other program that I know about because you shared it as part of one of our campaigns to kind of share stories of sustainability was your program around supporting victims of domestic violence.
Yeah, we call it our GO program, Great Opportunities Program, and that is something that our human resources team started in partnering with some of the organizations in our area that support folks who have been affected by domestic violence and trying to connect them with careers. So creating a really supportive work environment to bring folks on board and meet their needs during what's obviously a really trying time. So creating flexible work schedules, a supportive kind of educated environment where they are, a mentorship program with a leader at the bank, lunches with our leadership, just creating that kind of wraparound experience for folks, and then getting them a number of certifications to help them build their career. And that's been a really rewarding thing, and another thing that we've been doing for a long time, and they were like, oh, we should probably talk about this. But it just feels like the right thing to do, and now it's expanding into our work with substance use disorder and hiring folks in recovery as well. So
well, and that's the cool thing I think about the storytelling that you do, Zac, too, is that it, like, sharing that story, like, everybody was like, wow, that is really incredible. So all these other businesses and individuals are hearing about what Kennybunk Savings is doing. And suddenly those things that they thought, that's too hard because I'm not a big business, they're like, wait, Kennybunk Savings isn't that big. Like,
yeah, that was a line that stuck out to me from that when we were having these discussions. And when I was in fact learning about the GO program, because it had been going on, but it was this thing that was, for reasons of confidentiality and everything else, kept pretty quiet, understandably. But, what I learned was that sometimes, people would go to these shelters and that sort of thing and have like job fairs. And so what one of our coworkers said was, yeah, we could hold a job fair, but like we have jobs, and I thought, oh, right. Like that's so funny. And that's why we do need to talk about it to other people that also have jobs. And that was a really gratifying moment when we did a little video about it at something sponsored by the NHBSR, and other organizations got in touch. Like, hey, how do we get started? How can we start sharing resources?
This is so cool. And then there was also the comment, okay, it takes a Maine-based company to tell us about this cool New Hampshire recovery-friendly program. It's like, okay.
And we do have amazing companies in New Hampshire that do it too. Hypertherm, which I know you've done a lot with, is an amazing recovery-friendly workplace too.
No, there are a lot of them.
But jumping on board and trying to spread the word, I think, is where it just got really fun. So we thank you for that opportunity too.
Yeah. No, but it's the important thing is kind of going back to your play, that there is, we all need to be socially responsible. We need to kind of, get out of our own selves and kind of think about how we can be, how we can be better for the community. I think that's, everybody has a role, businesses have a role, but we as individuals do as well. And I think that's one of the toughest things that I've seen in the last few years is the division between people, and how people that have so much in common and have so many things that they care about in common can't quite come together to build off of that common ground. And that's something I think that we all need to work on, is finding that ability to listen to someone else, and even though our opinions on a certain topic are different, just trying to find somewhere to start building from, because we can't keep standing on each side of the divide yelling at one another and thinking we're going to get anywhere. So I think all of us, have that element of social responsibility that we need to bring to our daily lives, even if it's driving down the road and avoiding the opportunity to sit and yell and curse at someone that cuts you off. Okay, maybe something is going on in their day that really required them to thrive like that.
I try to remember all the time. There's that David Foster Wallace gave a graduation speech. It's like a little book. It's called This Is Water. And that's like what so much of it is about like just being mindful about like other people that seem angry and I try to remember it all the time. You both have made me feel so much better about this thing that Genevieve and I were both kind of getting at, which is just this idea that one thing that concerns me, I guess, when I think about like the prevalence of corporate social responsibility is that like it's all we're going to have. Like in the wake of the Roe news, right? Amazon was like, oh, we'll pay for your relocation to, get an abortion. And it's like, that's not that great. Like, I don't want people to have to disclose that information to their employer. I don't want people to have to rely on working for Amazon in order for that to happen. Like, it's just, that's what I get worried about. Is I get worried about creating this world where the only socially benevolent people are the employers. But we just had 2 good examples, right? Or 3 good examples of the ways in which that stuff trips over into other like areas, and how we can start to even push a very unresponsive government in the right direction. And I do think that when we think about like social responsibility, I think that it's always landing somewhere, and then it always pushes outward from wherever it lands, which I think is good. Like I think that's the positive sign, right? Is that like we do seem to be in a moment where it's landing in this place of where people are employed, and because of like the Great Resignation and because of the pandemic and everything, workers have like a lot of swing right now.
Well, work is a big part of people's lives.
Yeah,
and I think when businesses understand that and understand the role that they hold, not just in your employee's life, but also their family, and thinking about how you can invest in them and their wellness. I just think it's what we have to do as a business, not just to hold on to our workforce, but because it's the right thing. And I think that is definitely something, there's a light being shined on that right now for sure.
Yeah. No, the pandemic definitely kind of shone a light on that whole, like we've got to, we need paid family and medical leave. We need, daycare to be better supported. Like those people need to be paid much better. They've got a very important responsibility, as do teachers. And I mean, there are just so many areas that I think we've, it's important for us as individuals, but it's important for the business community to say that these are issues that we can't kind of say, well, this is the way we've always done it. Which honestly, I think my generation kind of falls back on a lot is, but it's something that we've got to reevaluate. And I think that's been the good thing that's come out of the pandemic, is that it's really forcing us to look differently. One of our CEOs was like, who knew that my employees would actually be more productive working from home than they are from the office? And I didn't trust my best employees to be that way. It was like, he was mocking himself, but it was just, sometimes it takes that dramatic incident to kind of wake people up. And hopefully, this has been a time that we can wake up from and build back better, to use a very
ironically.
A left-leaning idea.
Yeah. A guy that I spoke to at the conference earlier this month that the NHBSR hosted, he made a very interesting point, which he was talking about this idea that during the pandemic, it was like your work life and your home life like really started to blend together more, which is something that people always kind of warn you about, right? Like, don't let those two things. But he said for the first time ever, it felt like home life was like winning that war, you know? And it was like kind of cool that he was like, I was really enjoying like seeing my coworkers' families. And I really, you know, and this was like an older guy. He was like, I understood my relationship to my life and my family and my work in a totally different way, you know? And I was like, oh, really? I'm excited to hear that. Like, that sounds good because yeah, especially as you get deeper into your career, and it starts to take over, like you feel like it might take over more of your life, right? You have more and more children, in my case, you know, and you're like, I gotta keep making more money to like pay for all the candy or whatever. You know, it's
formula now.
yeah, it's important to know that that at least for the moment, it's you know, it's leaning in the direction of humanity and community and people, and something that I really sensed from lots of business owners is that they were really trying to look for ways to solidify that. Like, okay, we've made being good people an official part of our business. I learned the term B Corp here in this theater like 2 years ago. Rick Wallace was here from Piscataqua Savings Bank and talked about the B Corp certification thing. And I've become like a big B Corp nerd. And so like I'm always so excited when my wife does the grocery shopping and she brings back the butter that has the B Corporation on it, because I know she knows it's important to me, and then that's, you know, so she always gets it. Even though it's like $1 more, it's like, it's worth it.
I don't know the term.
Cool. So a B Corp is a certified corporation that is like, you're gonna do better at this than me.
It's incorporated for the benefit of defined stakeholders. So it's not just shareholders. It's really thinking about, you know, your customers, your employees, the suppliers that you buy things. It's thinking about kind of the entire environment, and they define what is important. So the states have designations now that you can officially incorporate as a benefit corporation, but there's also this certification that actually is required at some level if you're going to be a benefit corporation, that you have some third party group that kind of certifies that you do what you say you're doing.
And it's a national.
It is.
International.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah,
on
it's
Started
yeah.
in Baltimore with a group of young men who were, you know, struggled in poverty, and they went through a program where they went to Africa and sort of found their roots, and they came back and they wanted to do something for the community to give back. So they started an ice cream company, and they decided they wanted it to benefit others, and they created the first B Corp. That's where it started.
Yeah, and it's a really rigorous certification process. It's no joke. We're working on it ourselves too, and you have to think about how your business is governed, how you invest in your employees, how you look at your customers, how you impact your environment, and how your business impacts the environment. And so it really is a really interesting framework, I think, for a business to kind of hold itself up to and understand the way that we do affect our communities around us, and the way that we can make some adjustments to the way that we do business, or just think about the way we've been doing things, which is actually pretty good in some cases, and what that really means, what the impact of that is.
But it doesn't
it's really
let you
interesting.
rest on your laurels either. You have to keep thinking about, you know, in 3 years, they're pushing you to get to a higher score, and there are new questions. You know, you're not answering the same set, you're not meeting the same standards at all. You're really required to keep upping where you're going.
Your game.
And we're really lucky because at UNH, the Sustainability Institute has a Be Impact Clinic, which helps businesses go through this process. But the really other great side effect of that is that the students are actually the consultants. So these consulting teams are built of students who've been through the process before and those coming in and just learning it. And so those teams go out to the selected businesses and work with them through the process. So it's also building these future employees that have that lens of sustainability, and they're coming from so many different disciplines that it's really exciting to think about how it will impact Northern New England, in the future, because it's, I think they're going to go out there and continue to demand more and more change and be more innovative and really get business to think about how they can be better in ways that it's not about doing less harm. It's about actually being a positive, whether it's the environment or community, that we can really be drivers of positive change.
Yeah, we participated in the Be Impact Clinic in 2020, and the students were amazing and just so inspiring. I don't remember just being like quite as articulate and just as amazing as they were when I was in college. They were fantastic, but we actually, the kind of culminating event with the Be Impact Clinic, they were presenting to us and the other businesses that had participated, and also someone from B Lab, which is the company that does B Corp certification, and they didn't recognize our structure, which is being a mutual bank where we don't have stockholders, and so she actually kind of spoke up and was like, what the heck? This is a really amazing corporate structure that is stakeholder economics, because by nature, and we need to make sure that we're recognizing this. So it was really amazing, and I think they all went out with a lot of interesting thoughts and not thinking that all banks are evil too, which was also good.
The college kids, I do find all that stuff so inspiring, like the social venture innovation stuff they do at UNH. I've gotten to judge the high school competition for that. I got to go talk to the Paul School, and the way that what struck me was the way that the huge problems facing the world, climate change, things like that, they see so differently, college students. And I say this in a totally non-cynical way, they see it as a way to make money and succeed. They're like, I'm gonna start a business to fix this, and that is so completely different than the way that I have, that I thought ever, until I was 33 years old and talking to these kids on Zoom, and it's impressive. I think it's a very optimistic perspective, but it is also very realistic in a way that I'm still kind of wrapping my head around it. Every time I get a chance to interact with some of those students from UNH and the people who are involved in the Sustainability Institute, it's like...
That's what's so exciting though, right? It's kind of breaking old models and really being innovative and, pushing us all to think differently. And I think that's going to be the key to addressing some of our big issues like the climate crisis and, the divide that we're in right now. So more power to them.
Yes, I'm actually on the advisory board with the Sustainability Institute, and so we just recently had a meeting and got to hear student presentations on some of the sustainability fellowship work that they had done and what they were focusing on through a whole semester, and it was absolutely incredible. It definitely makes you feel like our future is bright. It was great, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just so envious of people that kind of have that sense. They find that they come by that sense of purpose and stuff early in life, I feel like I'm always kind of trying to reach back to people that are, a little younger than me to kind of just get them a couple of years ahead of me on that path. Because it took me a little while to get there. But I think more and more people are getting there, at different times. People are getting there at the end of their careers. And I think that's great too. But yeah, I have to observe, Michelle, you're a great closing sentiment person. You do this, you're good at doing that thing where you're I can bring this in for a landing if I need to. Which I don't actually know if we need to. I don't know how we're doing on time, if anybody has any questions.
We have about 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. Great. Well, I have more questions, but I don't want to not give other people an opportunity to ask. Anything in particular? Could jump in. Just speak up if you do.
I have a question. I'm curious, with all the issues that are out in front of us, how your bank and your organization keeps your eye on the ball. I mean, it's so easy to get distracted. You're like, the opiate crisis, and then, then there's the pandemic, and then there's the climate change gets worse, and then there's, what's the decision-making process that allows you to stay focused and moving forward?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I think a lot of the answer is putting resources into paying people to pay attention, and that's the really exciting thing is that our team, that's our jobs, is to understand what's happening in the world, in our communities, and where we can take a role. So when we have our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, and our Recovery Friendly Workplace Initiative, and employee wellness, and we're able to kind of be on the lookout with organizations like NHBSR who are helping to point us in the right direction, and then just watch what's happening and try to understand those opportunities for us to step in and use our voice as a business and say, hey, this matters. We're trying to do something around this and affect some change.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is really, if you're running a business, you're thinking about really what is the purpose of what I'm doing, and listening to your employees. I mean, that's the key, is to really listen and understand what their issues are and what their concerns are, and really working on that first, because then the rest of it is going to start falling into place. And they're going to bring in things that they care about, that, it's not just, one person at the top kind of directing how we're all going to go, but it really is kind of everybody coming together. It was like we, a couple of years ago, brought a workplace racial equity challenge after George Floyd's murder. We were in the midst of running our first digital conference, kind of pivoting quickly after everything closed down, and his kind of the reaction after his murder really started bubbling up, and we had, in pivoting, had kind of made the choice to run the conference, split it out and run it over several days, because Zoom was still fairly new to everybody, and we thought a day of running an entire day of Zoom was overwhelming. So but in the midst of it, I had come across a Nike statement about the whole incident, and I thought was eloquent, but a woman who worked with me of Chinese descent had said to me, you can't say anything if you're not going to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I took it to heart. I was like, I didn't play the statement on the, digital. We were looking for ways to be relevant about that issue, but I really realized it isn't going to do anybody good if we replay this statement. And so I spent a lot of time over the summer. I connected, I did a lot of work with B-Lab and listening. They have some phenomenal people in their leadership. But I also stayed locally with a woman, Beth Tenner, that I have worked with over and over again over the years. And she came to me and said, a friend of mine and I wrote a racial equity challenge for our alumni class at Bates. And, I'm just wondering if you want to take a look at it. It has been, one of the most impactful programs that we have run. It was all digital, so you never really knew. But the first year, 750 people signed up with no promotion to it at all. Just people immediately signed up, and we ran it for the third time this January. But it's just, I think people bring their passion and then they take it and make it real for them in their lives. So, and that workplace racial equity program is free. So it's, if groups want to run it, if towns want to run it, it's something that we offer thanks to some really great corporate citizens like Kennebunk Savings who put the money in to help us, pay for the curation of the challenge and keep it up to date. And now we're running a climate action challenge, really trying to get people activated about making commitments and not just kind of letting it feel so overwhelming that you can't move on anything. So I think that there are a lot of ways that that individuals can really take things and bubble them up. And, I think we all have to kind of focus on what speaks to us. We're actually going to put out a 1-question survey to our members next week about what is the value that you would stand up and fight for. Because we feel like we're at a point where, democracy is constantly under siege, and the institutions that we have depended upon, speaking of Roe, I was kind of blown away to find that, these opinions are being written before the case is even being heard. And, it seems so different than what I had received as instructions when I was considered as a juror, that, can I open-mindedly consider a case, regardless of my feelings. So I just feel like we're trying to even understand what are the values that we need to keep our eyes on, that, we're trying to bring important, relevant programming to businesses, but what are the things that really, people are, just activated by that, it creates passion within your being that, you want to do something about it. And I think that's, in this busy time when it's so overwhelming, we've got to focus on the things that are meaningful to us.
Right, and I think there's this equation of what am I activated about, in the sense of helplessness can paralyze people. Like,
right.
is there anything that can be done that will make a difference?
Yeah.
And that's certainly the case with climate. Certainly, it's just we've been sort of beaten. A lot of people have been beaten down.
Right.
By that.
And I think that's where when you do have an employer that is paying attention to this stuff and is trying to do good, if you can tap into it at work and just find something that you can do to kind of feel like you're doing something and being part of the business as a force for good and just being part of changing things. So I think that you're so right about listening to our employees, and as they bubble up things that are important to them, we're always trying to find volunteer opportunities for them to get out there into their communities, and so I think that's a big part of it too. If maybe even it's just that finding something there at work.
And I think that there's a dawning sense too that so much of this is connected, right? So one thing that I think is very helpful, that I try to remind myself all the time, is that if you're doing one thing, you're pulling at one thread, right? It's all connected. So you're working on your thing, and other people are working on unraveling the problem over here. And it may seem like you're doing two totally different things, but there is a racial equity component to climate change. There is, all of these things are connected to each other, and so it can be overwhelming to think about all the problems that we face, but it's like, just pick one, and that's hard to do too. but like once you do, and you can start working at it, I think it's gonna get easier and easier to see. As more and more people are activated and more people are pulling, it's going to be easier and easier to see more progress. That's what I hope anyway.
And I think talking with other people, just really listening to your own community when you're out there and understanding what people's needs are, and, kind of bringing that back to your employer, because sometimes it's not really understanding the whole story. But, that's something with our work with the racial equity program, being able to talk to different people, different communities, and understanding the challenges that are faced. People would come into these, we were having Zoom discussions that people were bearing their souls. It was really, but it was just amazing for people to be able to share that kind of, sense of need and desire to really change things, that it gets other people inspired to realize that little thing that you're doing that you think is nothing is having a big impact on somebody. Just like the programs that you shared at the Slam, it impacted a lot of people. And I think in the end, it's not just people in your community, it's people in here and there and all of these other communities that suddenly somebody's paying attention to those issues. So we need more Kenny Bonk savings in the world.
Well, and we need more NHBSRs too, So Michelle, Liz, this was awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. Great. I feel like I feel renewed, which is like a good It's a good feeling. You know, you're like, all right, everything's gonna be okay.
As long as we keep working on it.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, so thank you everybody for coming, and thank you for watching at home. Yeah.
Thank you.